Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Atomic Mash Transmission Live. I almost got mush mouth on that, but it was okay, I think. Okay. Today, we are going to be painting Captain Marvel Cosmic Avenger from the upcoming Earth's Mightiest core set. Just kind of continuing on with our MCP binge as we get ready for the big release of the revised latest core set, Earth's Mightiest, which will be hitting stores here in like a week, something like that, very soon. Anne's not telling me, so she clearly doesn't want to help me out.
I do want to help you out.
With that said, we're just going to throw...
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th! What a great day
How
for
could you
Earth's
forget?
Mightiest. I don't think anyone ever told me that originally, so now I won't forget it because Friday the 13th. But yeah, with that, we've only got an hour, so let's dive in and get some paints going on here on this fantastic Carol Danvers. I do have both. So we have both her transformation and her standard form. I opted to go with the long hair instead of the short hair. And of course, I did the cowl with the mohawk, the helmet with the mohawk for my binary version. Seemed weird to go from short hair to long hair, but I guess you could do that if you wanted to. Maybe do some cool like effects with the hair to make it look like energy glow. I don't know. But with that, we're just going to do a pretty classic Captain Marvel today. So we're going to mix in kind of a little bit of a blue for the suit. We got reds, yellows, some skin tones, all that good stuff. Just going to kind of work on making a bit of a wash here. Probably shouldn't be using my fancy brand new brush. Let's see how this...
I was going to say, you finally got a new brush, so the brush wars can end at long last.
I don't think that they're going to end, but you know, until these brushes get ruined next week, and I have to find out what little gremlin's coming in and destroying my brushes.
Well, I was told I was lashed soundly.
Were you?
Allegedly, for legal reasons, by your cohort for allowing you to imply that he may have ever touched one of your brushes. So I will stand here proudly today under the greatest scrutiny to say that Dallas does not touch your brushes, my good sir.
See, he says this, but yet there's a ton of brushes. And first of all, these are not my brushes. They're the Stream Room's brushes. Just for clarification, I would take my brushes with me. I would not leave my brushes here. So we have communal Stream Room brushes, supposedly. However,
that are only used by you.
Every time, yeah, this is the claim, but I don't believe it because someone's coming in here and using these brushes. I don't know, maybe it's not Dallas, you know, far be it from me to say that he is untruthful here. I've known Dallas for a long time. He is nothing but truthful. But that means that there's someone else who's just coming in and like doing something untoward with these brushes.
It must be Matt.
Oh, Furbishay?
He's the only one.
He does
come. How I went from I will stand here proudly and defend the honor of my coworkers.
Well, just the one. To be fair, Furbishay's he's not the type to probably come in and like start putting your feet to the fire.
That's true.
About him being the one ruining the brushes. In fact, he probably would just cackle and be like, oh, I wish I had done that. Because he's a troublemaker. He's a mischievous little boy.
Clip it.
Yeah, clip it. It's fine.
Send tweet.
We got Loki coming out on the 5th. Mischief is back, baby. I don't know. That naturally seemed like what you would say. It's all that old-timey radio. It's coming back. Mischief is back, baby. And then you just, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
All this to say, who is it? Mysterious brush.
It's truly a whodunit for the ages because no one's claiming culpability here and
very few people come in this room, and I realize that makes me a prime suspect.
It does.
Dear reader, I do not paint in here and have no reason.
That's exactly
my
what
painting happens at home.
That's exactly what somebody who was destroying brushes would say, though. But clearly, it's not me.
But it would be against my nature to do such a thing.
Would it?
Well, how would it benefit me to ruin your brushes?
Look,
Tell that story.
I don't think that anyone's doing it because they're my brushes. First of all, they're communal brushes.
You keep saying that, but you are the only one.
That's not true, because someone is coming in here and they are trashing these brushes, these poor, innocent brushes. I am only here once a week, and once stream ends, I have other things that I have to do. So it is not me.
Okay, me too also?
It's not like but you're here more.
I'm literally here, twice a week.
Yeah, see, you're here more. 2 is more than 1.
I guess just
you can't argue with numbers.
Now,
development wins again.
I am going to throw myself under a bus.
Yeah, see? The truth is coming out right here.
I sent a message to Dallas yesterday because I said something strange has just happened to me. And he said, what? And I said, I was cleaning off my brush and it snapped in two for a reason I cannot. Like, I've never seen anything like that. And he's like, yeah, I've never seen that happen. I don't know why something like that would happen to someone like you.
Oh, just to someone like you, that's it?
No. Like a brush criminal, obviously. So what I'm saying is maybe just my mere presence is enough to ruin a brush.
It might be. I've known people who have had weirder superpowers, so.
Some people have bad dice rolls. Maybe I just am a ruiner of brushes.
Maybe. I don't know. All I know is that it seems like every time we bring in brand new brushes to the communal brush jar that is here,
brush jar, yes.
The next week they're once again ruined. Like somebody has just put them through the ringer. So I erroneously claimed it was Dallas. Apparently there's tape that proves that he doesn't use those brushes, which I find weird because they're here for us to use.
Right.
But that's fine. That's where we're at.
He just
so
has his important, special brush time brushes.
Special brush time? You mean like his own brushes? Every time you're using a brush is special brush time, Anne. I don't think we have to differentiate. Let's not make these brushes feel like they're missing out. One could say that these brushes get overloved, in fact, and that's why they keep getting ruined in a week. Someone is loving them too hard. Why isn't Spectacular Spider-Man in Defenders? Well, because he's not. I mean, when it comes to who goes in Affiliation and why, some of it is based off of comics lore and snapshot in time. So was young Parker, as Spectacular is kind of meant to be, fresh bite, 16, still in high school, doing his stuff. Was he part of the Defenders? I don't think so. I don't think he had the notoriety yet to really fit in there. But then, of course, there's also game specifics. Like we talk about how Crisis Protocol, it leans very heavily on the 616, the primary Marvel continuity of the comics, for its inspiration, and we kind of take cues from that as we create characters and create affiliations. But at the end of the day, with the way the game has to be released and the fact that not every character is available right away and we have different versions and all that, there are gameplay needs that say, well, you need to expand Midnight Suns, for instance, with a couple extra characters. So we'll go on a little bit of a stretch and say, well, the Immortal Hulk is kind of spooky and otherworldly, and he fits a little bit into the Midnight Suns vibe. And he does stuff for the Affiliation that we really think we'd like to put in there and see get added to the Affiliation. So we're going to say in the Marvel Crisis Protocol universe, Immortal Hulk's part of the Midnight Suns. Or we'll grab characters that had a cameo appearance in one story or book or whatever and kind of give them full ownership of stuff. And there are conversations that also happen with Marvel. There are certain things that, certain characters that they want to keep separate from certain affiliations or other considerations that, we take into account as well, because it is a dialogue and a partnership and everything else. So we're always working together to make sure the game is the best it can be, but also that it's representing the license and the IP as appropriately and correctly as possible based on, our partner's desires and needs and all of that. So it's a nuanced question. It's not like, I wish I could tell you that it was just like arbitrary decision making, because maybe that would make it easier or simpler to at least disagree with. But the fact of the matter is that affiliation, choice, and decision making is pretty nuanced and semi-fluid in terms of how things shake out and where we go. Again, we want to make as close as possible the feeling of the primary Marvel continuity, but at the end of the day, we are doing things that are different because of various reasons, and that does mean that when you're playing Marvel Crisis Protocol or engaging with it, you are, living in an alternate universe. I keep waiting for the day when we finally get our designation. I want a number. I want a number, Anne. And don't just say one, because you can't assign it. We need an official one. And maybe someday we'll get it. I don't know.
It should be Universe 1013. There,
1013. I mean, if it was going to be any number, it'd be 0731.
That's true.
Because that's the studio number right there.
That was better than mine.
I know.
That's why you're in charge.
That's why I don't get to make these decisions.
Well, let me ask you a question about how you paint red. Because
Okay.
I've been painting a lot of red myself
Sure.
lately, and I have found it confounding in the same way
Confounding.
painting orange is confounding. So how do you go about laying down like a bright red like that? Or how are you making sure it's not runny or milky?
Milky.
I don't know how else to describe
Goodness. Yeah, so I mean, the weaker pigments, right? The brighter the pigment, or the brighter the color, the weaker the pigment is kind of the rule. So blue and black, those darker colors, but blue especially, because blue is a naturally occurring pigment. It's very, very strong. So it bullies like every other color for the most part. Red, yellow, orange, those colors are weaker pigments because they're brighter. So they just don't have the same opacity, and they can be very tricky to work with. So when you're painting red, my normal approach to painting red is to lay down a darker base coat of red first over a light base. So we've got like our zenith primed color here. So instead of painting my red over a black, which would take many, many thin coats to build up the kind of opacity that I wanted and the richness, I'm already giving myself a quicker way forward by saying, okay, well, we're going to use a gray or a white. Now that will change the overall final look of your colors, because doing your colors over a darker undercoat, like a black or a dark gray, is going to give you more muted colors, which will potentially feel more realistic. But we're painting comic book characters in classic comic book style, so I want the colors to be very vibrant and poppy. In that case, I'm happy to do it over a gray undertone. Now I realize that I don't remember how this helmet's painted, and I feel like I'm going to mess it up, so I'm going to look really quick. But so you do your brighter colors over a light coat. That helps a ton. When it comes to red, that's if you kind of start with a deeper tone and then build up. The way you can get it to be very, very vibrant is, oh, come on, show me her helmet. You're the worst image search. There we go. Yeah, I knew it had blue in it, of course. Okay, we're good. So again, like here, what I'm doing just for like quick reds is I'm just going to build my colors over my gray, and I'm starting with burnt red, which is a deeper color, and then I will slowly build up through edge highlights or like kind of standard layering and edge highlights into my bright red. Now, the way that you get a really vibrant red is you're going to build your reds up until they're almost like a salmon pink. And you can do that by, traditionally the easiest way, no matter what paint range you're using, is to, instead of mixing in white which will give you like baby pink, right? We don't want that. We want our reds to be fiery and vibrant, not soft and Valentine's Day-y. So the way that you approach that is by using a color to do highlights with that has yellow in it or red in it already. You avoid that problem of having the pink, the really baby soft pink, come out. So you build it up to like a salmon color. And then, once you have your highlights firmly established, you go through with a red glaze. So you take red ink or transparent red, because the Pro Acryline doesn't have inks, but it does have transparent colors, which kind of do the same thing. They're a little less punchy than inks. They're a different style of paint, but they can kind of be used in similar ways. So once you build up to that salmon color, you're gonna be like, this doesn't look like red anymore. That's okay, because the next step of the process is to take that red glaze and over the course of several applications, right? We're talking about like, we're really gonna get into our reds now. We wanna take the time to really create punchy reds. So over several applications of red glaze, letting it completely dry each time, you're going to build up your red color, and it's going to take that salmon peachiness, that pink, and it's going to reestablish it as this really vibrant and bright red. And that will give you the best looking red that you've ever seen. But it takes a long time to achieve, because you're talking about, it's not 2 or 3 glazes of red ink. It's typically like 15.
15?
Yeah, it's a lot, right? And so, is that really worth it for a tabletop mini? Probably not. Again, that's all personal preference, and are you having a good time and enjoying it and everything else? Like, if you are, more power to you, like, go for it. But that's how you see those really amazing reds that you see on like studio miniatures, the ones done by our fabulous painters, Brendan Roy and other folks, Dallas and things like that. It's an arduous process that achieves an amazing result. I shortcut that by simply not going completely peach. So instead, I'm pretty happy with just going to my bold pyrrole red here over my darker red, and I'll just build that up again using kind of classic layering highlights. So just think about where the light's going to hit, build up your color, leave the darker color in the recesses, and you'll wind up with something that looks pretty good. But the goal here is start with a shade or a base coat that is close to the color, the ultimate color you want, but is slightly darker, and then just build up through numerous layers and applications. Yellow, the trick with yellow is to not paint yellow, which sounds weird, but you want a base coat with like an ochre, and we're going to do a little bit of that on this Captain Marvel because she does have some yellow on her. With like the star and stuff, her costume trim is yellow. So we're going to do some ochre, and then we're going to build that up into a pure yellow. It's similar to how you paint whites, and we've talked a lot about how to paint whites on stream at many times, where the trick to painting white is to not paint white. You paint the shadow, and then you use just enough white at the end for the highlights that it tricks the eye into seeing white, because if you really pay attention to the world around you, you'll notice that you never actually see true white. You always see shades or like white that's been diluted with various colors, blues, greens, purples, whatever, depending on the light source. And then at its like brightest spots, or it's like its highest highlights, you get a little bit of pure white, but not much. And so this has kind of trained our brains to not see pure white as correct, because that's not how, pure white doesn't exist in our reality. You just really don't see it that way, because you're always catching the ambient colors of the surroundings or of the light source or of everything else. And that's typically why when people try to paint white for the first time or whatever, and they slather on a huge amount of white paint to get the opacity to be white, solid white, you look at it and you go, this looks completely gross. It doesn't look correct. It looks weird and fake, and that's because you don't see that color in real life. That's not how those colors exist. So if you want your whites to look correct to the eye, you're now talking about having to go in and have those chromatic undertones with just a little bit of white on top, and the eye will read that. Go look at any, famous oil painting or artist painting. Look at the whites and you'll see, oh my gosh, those whites aren't white. They're purple, they're blue, they're green. They're everything but white. And there might just be a little hint of white at the very tippy peaks of the highlights or whatever. But they're not white. They're not actually white. Not in the way that we often approach whites when we're just learning to paint. And we pull out our titanium white paint and we're like, I'm going to paint this white. And then we get done and we're like, this looks terrible. It's because that's not white. It's not how white actually exists. So, but you can see here, like going through the reds as I've been blabbering on about these colors, how I'm just kind of like building up my layers slowly but surely. And yeah, glazing overall is it's a great way to build up colors, to build up boldness in colors. You can also use it to smooth out transitions and highlights to create color gradients that feel smooth and effortless and really natural. So it's a huge tool in the toolbox that can make a big difference in your end amount of painting. And with the reds, we talked about 15 layers of glaze. That's intense. But if you want to reach kind of that professional level of studio red, it's what it's going to take. For a tabletop mini, or just like for your own personal enjoyment stuff, assuming that's not the level that you're aiming for, that's not the goal of the miniature you're painting, which for me it rarely is. I never paint anything like a studio mini. They're always meant for my enjoyment, my hobby time enjoyment, and then to wind up on the tabletop to play games with. So when you're doing that, glazing like 2-3 layers is often plenty to get enough of that translucency to make it look really great, and to get all of its good effects without breaking the time bank, as it were.
So last week when Dallas was on, he was you're talking today about like layering and the patience that takes. Is there an activity or snack or something you do to keep yourself from listening to that I gotta keep doing stuff to this small tiny thing in my hands voice, and allow layers to dry? Do you have like a way of getting yourself away from the table for a time, or what do you do to get through that?
Do I do anything special? I don't know. That's a great question. I don't think like really. So oftentimes what I'll do is if I don't really worry too much about like how is this section going. If I feel like the paint needs more time to dry, for example, like the blue on the suit, I moved over to the red and we've just been working on the red. So I'll kind of just play it by ear when it comes to, do I need to leave a sectional in to let it dry? When it comes to the question of like, am I done? Have I done enough? A little bit of time and like distance often makes a huge difference. So if I get really frustrated with something, or I'm working an area and I'm just like, this looks like trash. It just, every time I touch it, it seems to get worse. I'll take that as my cue to like stop, to go take a break. Either take a walk, check on what the fam's doing, maybe step away and like take the dogs outside or something, whatever. But even a 15-minute break and then coming back and looking again and being like, okay, do I still hate it? Or is it just the fact that I'm so zoomed in on a feature and it's not looking right that I'm not seeing the whole canvas? And I think that's one of like the things that, you know, it takes a while to figure out or to learn, is that your eyes are amazing organs, because you think about the amount of surface area that we zoom in on when we're painting and what we're looking at and what we're able to perceive at that level, like this tiny microns. We're talking about like microns of level, really millimeters, just tiny amounts of space. And the problem is that when you zoom in like that, it's like, okay, great, I can see exactly what's going on, where the brush is applying paint. I can see where the roughness is. I can see what I like, what I don't like. But that's not how you're going to perceive the whole piece, right? The miniature it's not composed of the shoulder and the tip of the head and the knee and the toe. The miniature is this, right? It's the miniature. So what you have to be able to do, and often can be difficult when you're in the midst of it, is to take a step back, let your eyes defocus on the area you're looking at or working on, and instead come back with fresh eyes, with a reset, and look at the whole canvas. There's so many times where like I've felt discouraged or frustrated with a miniature that I've been working on, because I'm just like, this part looks like crap, and I'll storm off and just like be like, I'm done with this. Like I don't want to look at this thing anymore. I'm leaving. And I'll kind of like go off and I'll do some stuff and I'll come back an hour or two later, or maybe even in a couple days, and I'll look at it again. I'll be like, damn, this looks pretty good. Like it's pretty tight. There's a couple areas that I can work on, but for the most part, you know, everything's coming together. Like the brush strokes that I thought were too gross and chunky actually have settled into a way that, like, when I look at it from a whole point of the miniature, they work, right? They're adding the right amount of highlight and texture and elements, and they're playing well with X, Y, and Z blends and colors of everything else. And there's probably going to be places where I'm like, okay, I can smooth this out. I can maybe adjust this color. I can pop this highlight here to push the contrast more here. But you always have to remember that, you know, there's a danger in being so zoomed in to the details. You know, don't get lost in the details, because the details, they matter, but they only matter in terms of what they bring to the overall composition, right? It's like life. If you focus too much on the negative things that happened during your day, you're going to miss the greatness of the day. You have to be able to step back and look at the whole, not just the part, but the whole, and to understand what each part brings to the overall element, right? You know,
For sure.
And so that's kind of, I don't know, that didn't really answer your question, but that's the big thing, right? If I start to feel like I'm not having fun and I'm struggling and I don't like what I see, rather than continuing to work at it, I'll just take a break. And then I'll come back and look at it with fresh eyes. And 9 times out of 10, the fresh eye look says, oh, this is actually working really well. I like this. I like that. Sometimes that's just a question of like the paint drying, because, you know, if you're using a lot of mediums or anything like that, you're going to have a lot of shine and shimmer and glare and gloss, and that can obviously throw everything off as well. So a little time, a little space, a little reflection can do a huge amount of stuff. Just, again, no different than in life. Sometimes we talk about like, we'll laugh about this later, and you're like, no, we won't, and then you do. And that's because once you can see it for what it is, rather than the immediate like pain that it feels like, the disaster that it feels like, right? You can see how it all ties together.
Well, one of the things that really I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea that I get in my head when I'm painting. I get in the meditative fugue state zone, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you've been in that zone for a while, you do, like you said, get caught up in the details, or I get this thing where I'm like, I need to fix it. I need to push through, you know, what I consider my ugly stage, right, of the miniature, to when I'm excited about it again. And sometimes that causes me to paint through when I'm like too tired to be making good decisions, or my, fine motor control has been like exhausted for the period and I need a break, but my mind won't let me see that. And I've started to just set timers to check in with myself and be like, am I still doing work that I like, after 90 minutes or so? And usually it's yes, but once I get to that second 90-minute timer, I'm mad about something. And reading recently, we posted an interview that we had done with Jonathan Ho, the winner of the Path of the Worthy last year at Adepticon, where he talked about, whenever I felt myself slipping, I would go take a shower or go for a walk or, all these, break ideas that you were talking about, Shik. And it made me think, like, just because I feel like, Jonathan is painting on such a high level in comparison doesn't mean there's nothing I can take from that, as far as taking the breaks and, doing what you said to allow your eyes to readjust and examine the miniature from a whole perspective. And I feel like that's something that certainly I've been working on myself, but I wish that I had considered earlier in my painting journey as an option, because there are so many things that I painted that I just overworked and tried to fix, and either because mechanically paints were running together because it just wasn't giving glazes enough time to dry or whatever the case may be, it kept me from progressing, and now I'm feeling like I'm in a progression point again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it's one of those things where you have to allow yourself that grace to be able to, continue on, to grow, to do all of the things that you have to do. And I think a lot of the times when we're doing stuff that we feel like we should be more successful at, or that shouldn't be as hard, we tend to lose sight of the fact that it's a journey. It's not a destination. Yes, we finish every miniature and we get to embrace and enjoy that miniature for what it is and move on to the next one. But by the same token, right, like art's never done, truly. It's just, at some point you're like, I am done. The art itself could go on forever, right? Every piece you work on, you could work on until you died.
Well, and that is key, right? You have to get to a stage where you can put it down and start the next part of the journey. And conversely, I found myself, like, I'll learn something on the new miniature and I'll be like, man, I could really go back and, like, push that highlight on that face more, or add a different tone to my glaze and, like, redo this portion of it. And I'll go back sometimes and I'll do that and then feel even better about a miniature that I finished, a month prior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's something I used to never do, was like, once it was done, it was done. I would just move on.
Yeah, I think that all comes down to, like, again, what makes you as an artist happy and enjoy things. Like, I'm definitely of the Dallas camp that I don't go back and work on the things that I finished, because to me, right, it's once I call something done, I have put myself into it, and the next thing that I do will be a different, like, it will be more of me but different, and I just personally like seeing the growth and the journey. We've said it a few times when talking about the new Earth's Mightiest core set. Just because your new best is better than your old best doesn't mean your old best wasn't good. It just means you, as a person, as a team, as a creative, like, individual, have gotten better. But that's the whole point of why we engage in creativity. Why we as people are, actually wired genetically to get dopamine hits when we improve a skill. Because it means that you're going to be more successful. You're not going to get eaten by the tiger. Survival is good. You're wired to feel rewarded by the fact that you're getting better And so I like being able to just appreciate that journey and see the skill, and to go back and look at some just grandiose mess that I painted 10 years ago, and be like, man, I could do that so much better now, or I've learned this skill, or this is how I'd approach it now. But at the same time, to be able to look at that and say, but look at what that kid could accomplish back then, you know? Let's go back another 10 years and look at that other stuff. Look how much better you were then. Look at find the things that you did well, and then find the things you improved upon, because I guarantee you there were things that you did well. There are things that I used to do in some of my older miniatures that nowadays I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. Like sometimes I'm like, well, you know, overall this isn't the best work I've ever done, but damn, this guy really knew how to do some like great CAD key layers. Like these pants kick ass. And I don't do it that way anymore, and I can't even remember how I did it. So like your old self, they have skills that your new self just didn't develop or didn't like go with or move differently, and I think that's really cool. You know, it's one of those things like people always talk about, oh, he was, you know, an artist was in their blue state or their blue phase, or this artist was in their wing phase, right? Everything had wings. It's no different for you and your miniatures painting, you know? Like the things that you do during your phases, they're different. They're not the same, but at the same time, they're what make that period unique. They're what you as an artist or as a person was just really honed in on and either doing well or trying to develop. And I think that's so cool, right? To see the journey and to see things, to see how you used to do things differently, to see how you improve, but also how you've changed, you know? But yeah, 100%. If you can go back and improve something that you did using skills that you had, and that brings you joy, that's all that matters. Go do it. If you're not having fun, you should go find something to have fun with, because it's there's some truth to the fact that like art is suffering, but it's not supposed to be that much suffering, right? Like improving one's skills is a challenge. That's why it's so rewarding when you do it. But if you're just miserable all the time, like that's bad too.
I also, I used to order, if I had like a corset of something, right, that I was working through, I would order it by like characters I cared least about first to like work my way to like reward myself with the characters I cared about most. And I have now changed that completely, because I was just running into a situation where like I was batch painting a bunch of stuff that I was fine with, but I wasn't finding that joy like you're talking about. And I was like talking to Dallas about it, and he was like, why don't you just paint like your favorite character? And I was like, that's insane. You're crazy. But then I did, and now I can't stop painting again. And I'm working on those characters that I was less jazzed about now, but I feel like I got past the hump, right, of not feeling into it. And I feel like that can be really important. So changing your deeply held beliefs. Can't recommend it more. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to get completely caught up in the idea that, well, this is my favorite character, or this is the miniature I'm most looking forward to, but I don't want to screw it up. And I get that, right? Like wanting to do justice to your favorite miniature, your favorite thing, and be the best at it that you can be. But the fact of the matter is that, again, going back to that journey perspective, you're always going to be a better painter tomorrow.
And that's kind of what I realized, is I was like, you know what? I should tackle this because I feel excited about it and have a plan, right? So if you have a plan and you're excited, I mean, I don't know that we've talked about this, but here, but I've said it a bunch elsewhere, which is that like you can never count on being super inspired 100% of the time. So anytime you get to be in that cool, just absolutely jazzed spot where you feel super inspired, like take advantage of that, because when you're doing art a lot in whatever form it takes, like sometimes you get those awesome moments, but if you're actually, working on it consistently, you won't always have that feeling to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to have it is like a gift.
For sure. I'm gonna clean up those little spots of yellow. Ooh, that was more than a spot. That's okay.
Now you have a lot of painting to do, so let me ask, how do you have do you set goals or deadlines for yourself at all in your stuff that you're not doing with work? Obviously, we have deadlines as a studio.
Boy, howdy, so many deadlines. So many deadlines. These days, I mean, way back when, before, in the before times, and even now to some extent, right? There can be things where it's like, oh, this is due, I have an event that I'm going to, and I want to be able to play these things, right? I want to take this list, or I want to take these characters, or whatever. The schedule of in-store events or conventions or things like that, they used to really push me in terms of, and I think that was good and bad, because there were times where, like you said, it was just a grind because you had to do it. And the joy kind of fell away for the fact that the deadline said this must be done now, right? But so that used to kind of motivate some of my painting. It would be like, well, you got an event in 3 weeks that you want to go to, and you can't play with unpainted stuff at the event, because all of the stores that I've ever been to, especially my original store back home, they had a very stringent, it has to be painted to be played at an event or on the table, which I didn't love as much then, but really appreciate now, because it got me into the hobby and gave me the push I needed to try things, and be bold and adventurous, and kind of discover that, hey, I can put brush to paint and paint to miniatures, and then eventually that little seed grew into something that became a lot bigger of a passion. And it would have never really happened if I hadn't had that little push, right? That little prodding to be like, well, go do it, go give it a try, because you want to play in this event or that event or whatever. But nowadays, I don't really have time to do a whole lot of events or go outside, and that push just isn't quite there. There's no schedule anymore. So for me, it's a lot of, well, if I have time and I feel inspired, I'll go do it. But I got 2 middle school aged kiddos that all have things they have to do, and we got baseball games and jiu-jitsu and everything else. So, it's a bit of, if you have the time and you have the energy, sit down and do it, and that's great. And some days, I'll wake up early and feel motivated to dive in and do some painting beforehand. Some days I'll be around my lunch hour and I'll say, you know what? I'm feeling like painting today. And so I'll do it then. But for me now, it's more like, do I have the opportunity and do I have the desire? Then I'm going to do it. There was a time where it was very you're going to paint an hour a day minimum, just because that's going to get you better. It's going to get you more to where you want to be. And I had the ability to do that, and I was very disciplined in it. And so that's what I did. But, life takes you in different directions and makes you prioritize different things at different times. So now it's just a fun, relaxing pastime when I get to do it. I love it. And when I'm not doing it, I'm often thinking about it or watching videos or whatever, trying to, true hobbyist, right? I watch more videos than I actually do the thing now. It feels like.
I know that feeling.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I should do that next time. Or man, I really want to give this technique a try. And eventually I will, most of the time, but sometimes I don't. The only guaranteed hobby time that I have just because of the streams is this. I know every Tuesday I'm going to come in and paint for an hour or whatever, and then we have mini strav. But otherwise, when it comes to my personal hobby, it's very loosey-goosey.
Well, you hear that a lot, I think, from people in the hobby, that as, they age and their life takes on different shapes, that they lose touch with, how they're engaging in the hobby, 5 years ago might not be the same now because of life, kids, or move, or space, or, whatever the case may be. And the thing that I think is so important to remember is that your plan for productivity that you had last year may not work the same this year. So figuring out what the new normal is, so that you can feel productive and not hold yourself so stringently to, because you were saying it would be so easy to just be like, well, there was that time where I was painting an hour a day and I was just feeling myself get better all the time. So now if I'm not, doing that every time, then I have failed to be productive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be like that. Your sense of progress and how you're going to fit things in and how the day is going to, make room for your hobby is going to change over time. And I think that's so important, to let yourself be okay with feeling how things shift like that. My current stratagem is, rather than planning to paint in a particular order, I just have to get done at least 2 miniatures a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because that will help me catch up with the queue of all the things that I want to do. I'm making way for Earth's Mightiest. I'm about to go on a vacation, so once I have Earth's Mightiest, I want to dive right in. So yeah, figuring out how, not telling myself so stringently what I'm going to paint when, but just how much I need to have painted in a particular amount of time is working for me pretty okay.
Yeah, again, I think it depends. Depends what your goals are. It's well, I want to win bodybuilding competitions, but I don't want to go to the gym. Okay, you've not set a goal. You're making a genie wish at that point. Yeah. So if you really want the thing, then I think finding the dedication and the will to do it is a lot easier. And when you don't want to do a thing and it's just miserable, again, painting for me has always been, even when I had more of a stringent, I'm going to paint an hour a day, it was always enjoyable. It was never something I had to do. Because once it's something you have to do, it's a job, and this is a hobby. It's what I like to do. It's how I want to unwind. Forcing myself into a situation where it's not like that is very problematic. So that's why I don't put any pressure on myself. I just go, hey, you gonna paint today, Schick? And I go, you know what? I am. And then something blows up at the house, and all of a sudden everyone's like, but we're doing this today. I go, all right, well, I guess I didn't paint today. That's unfortunate. Maybe tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then some days, I roll out and sit down for 3 hours and I knock out 4 miniatures, and I'm like, this was a great day. I loved it. And, it's all just as it comes day to day. As long as I'm having fun and enjoying it, there's no pressure. There's no need to get things done. And that currently works for me. I look forward to the day where I have a bit more free time and less places to chauffeur kids to.
No, and that's so true, though. And that's why for me personally, the rule of 2 a week leaves a little bit of room for, well, I did 1 in a day, or I did some of one day, and then I sat down for 4 hours and knocked out more than 2. You know what I mean? It just leaves, like you were saying, the goal setting element only works if you can actually do it and commit to it.
Yeah, you just, again, some people, they live their lives a bit more like structured than I do. I'm not an itinerary person. I go on a vacation. I do not want to see a list of things we have to do. I just want to go with the flow. And if that flow is sitting at the pool the whole time and doing nothing, then that was a great vacation.
So we should never go on a vacation together.
Clearly not. No.
I think we just learned something very important.
No, if you know, I appreciate a person with a plan, and like I'll go along with it, but at the end of the day, like to me that's doing all the things and hitting all the spots, checking off the checklist. That's not what gives me the feeling of like happiness and accomplishment.
See, the way I function with the list situation is I need to know if a day is a relaxation day or if I'm supposed to be somewhere at 1 o'clock.
I have a shocking revelation for you, but when you're on vacation, every day is a relaxation day. Every day.
We can discuss that later.
I mean, that relaxation might be, you know, getting all the places that you wanted to get to within the time you wanted to get there. That's fair, I guess. But if it's making you stressed out, or if it's making you miserable, I think you're doing fun wrong. That's the only way to do fun wrong. Mm-hmm. If fun doesn't make you happy, you're doing fun wrong.
Well, and that certainly takes us back to, how to plan an attack for something like a core set or a bunch of minis that you're trying to get through in your queue. It's like it's all the opportunity and figuring out how, like, if it's not fun, find a new way to do it. Which to Stryker's question about my airbrush that I mentioned the other day, I haven't really gone back to it because I've been living La Vida 2-brush blending.
Oh, yeah.
And I had like a eureka moment painting something recently that made me go, oh my God, by George, I think she's got it. And so now I'm continuing that life so that I can hone in on that one skill, and then we'll get back to airbrush time.
2-brush blending is a phenomenal technique, and honestly one that if you can master, it speeds up your painting so much you don't even need an airbrush, really. You can just...
Well, that's certainly what I've been like loving about it, is I was like, am I a speed demon, or is this 2-brush blending?
Yeah, no, it's big. I mean, there are lots of ways to, you know, speed up your process and your painting. It's not... We've done the oil washes, we've done airbrushing, we've done 2-brush blending is a big one, but once you unlock that little hack that kind of like works with your style, once you start to figure out your particular formula for success that you enjoy, and it's different for everyone, you know, there's no one right or wrong way to be a successful painter or speed painter, right? Again, if you find a technique and it's fast, but you hate the way it looks and you don't like doing it, it's probably not going to be any faster than doing it the way you like. Because there's that zen moment of it. And if all you do is think about how much you hate it, how miserable the whole experience is, you're going to spend a lot of time hating it and not a lot of time doing it. And that's not going to make you any faster. All right. Pretty good progress on this. 6 minutes left. Let's see. What do we want to try to knock out here? Let's grab... There's a brown wash around here somewhere, but darn it all if I can find it. So I guess we'll use that. Sure. Oh, there it is. Sweet. Success. Let's grab a little bit of that. Grab a lot of this. Thin that out. You know what? Maybe we'll use a little bit of both. I'm just going to make a really quick kind of wash for my yellow here.
Kale is asking for folks that are doing this as both a job and a hobby, how do you stay motivated?
I mean, I think, there's the different projects at home versus at work is a big one. It's kind of like being in game dev or design or development, right? If you love the material, you know what? I haven't done a cooking reference yet. I'm going to do a cooking reference today because I got to check it off the bingo card.
Go for it.
The best chefs are the ones who love to go to restaurants and eat other chefs' food, right? Like, so if you love something as a creative person, I think when you find the thing that you love that is kind of creative or like as a hobby, but also works as your job, you'll find yourself just wanting to explore more. So what do I have a house full of? Games. I have so many games from so many different places, and every time I'm like, I probably have enough. Something new comes out, people talk about it, and I'm like, I got to check that out. I need to like see it. I need to play it. You find yourself voracious for exploration and discovery of what other people are doing. And so, when you want to be a great chef and you just enjoy cooking, you want to go out and you want to discover those flavors. You want to see what other chefs are doing. You want to see what your peers are doing. You want to try and experiment with different things, learn from cuisines and take stuff. And I think that's part of what really motivates folks who do art or hobby, both as a job and as a hobby, is that you can work 8 hours a day as a studio painter. And Dallas could talk specifically about this, but I know he and I have talked about it, so I don't feel too far off the mark speaking on the behalf. But like, when you go in and you paint a miniature for the studio, it's very formulaic. The studio minis have to look a certain way. They have to match. Your blues have to be the same. Your reds have to be the same. A miniature that was painted 6 years ago has to look identical to the one that's painted today because they have to be uniform, right? The studio has a style and a look. It's no different than, go watch the movie Chef. Fantastic movie. It's no different than kind of like Jon Favreau's character's struggles at the start of that movie. He's been cooking the exact same foods the exact same way for however many years he's been at his restaurant, and he's done with it. He goes home and he cooks all this fantastic stuff using all these different flavors and all this exploration. And then when he tries to bring that into the restaurant, the owner gets mad at him because that's not what people come to this restaurant for. They come for this. They come for molten lava cake. Damn it. And like that can be stifling. So how do you keep that passion alive? Well, you go out and you do different things. You try. Home is exploration time. Work is work time. Work is you have to do things a certain way. It is less creative in some ways, right? There are times where you get to kind of stretch your wings and explore. Maybe there's a new character or something different that you can go out and you can concept a new way of doing it or a new look because it hasn't been done before. But once that look is established, once that flavor profile of that dish is made, you're making that dish the same way day in and day out, nonstop, because that's the job, right? You're not coming in and creating art. You're doing work.
Well, and I think someone said it in chat, but the idea is like, for any job that you have, it's possible to get burnout. So it's less of I think it's more of a question of like, how do you handle burnout? For me, it's just like you said, it's about finding inspiration and the things that inspire you and allowing your time to be, my me time to be my me time, and my breaks to be my breaks. And then it means that, I can come back with fresh eyes. So even if I'm making that same lava cake, and obviously I don't have that job at the studio, but if in my job,
if you can make a good molten lava cake, I'm in. That could be your job.
Noted.
You just be the lava cake maker.
There's been a change in job title. this week at Atomic Mass Games.
We need a good lava cake producer here. Like, I love a good lava cake.
But yeah, and I think that's true of any job, but especially one that relies on your creative spirit being used, not just for fun but for profit. Step 3, profit. You got to figure out how you're gonna take your breaks and stay inspired and keep some things for you. And those are my recommendations.
Well, and I think there is the reality that you can do the thing you love as a job, and it can be something like, studio painting that Dallas did forever. He loves the hobby. He loves to paint. Still does it. Like, it's his primary relaxation method and everything. But when you come into work, you kind of recognize that, I'm doing what I love as a job, and that's amazing. But it's a job, right? Like, there are different expectations that you as a person need to set up when you come in and do your job, right? You're not going to get to do everything that you want. You're not going to necessarily fulfill every creative drive and itch that you hope for, because this is not your time. This is job time, and job time requires you to be good at the job. And a lot of the times the job doesn't give a damn about how you feel personally or creatively. It cares about what is going to be successful for the greater health of the studio, the project, whatever else, right? Like, it's a compromise like anything else. It's a relationship, no different than like working with coworkers or anything else. If you come in and you say, well, I'm the creative, I'm the genius, I know what I'm doing better than anything else, you're not going to be successful at it. You're going to be miserable at it, because the job doesn't function the way that your creativity or your brain works, right? It's just, that's never how it is. There's always going to be, you're working for a wider audience, not yourself. And you're working within a stricture and structure that has been set up for very good reasons, and that's why,
We're going to bump through some questions here real quick.
Real quick, because we have we're 3 minutes over. My
who
gosh.
dictates the studio style? Who got to say?
When it comes to like the paint colors and stuff? So Dallas and myself, Dallas is the creative director, and obviously as a highly experienced painter, worked to create kind of the style, right? Like, we sat down and we said, okay, well, what do we want? We're working on, with Marvel Crisis Protocol, we're working on comic book characters. We want really bright, vibrant colors. We want really chromatic blacks. Like, there shouldn't be any dull feeling. Like, it should pop off the screen and the page and the pictures. It should feel like the energy of the game that we're making, right? So we take that kind of like idea and those thoughts, and then Dallas, through his experience and his talent, is able to sit down with the painter and discuss the art style, and then him and the painter together, the original painter Brendan Roy, who did the vast majority of the original Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, still does most of it now today as well, kind of took those inspiration, those directions, and then turned it into colors. And then what'll happen is that they'll often develop recipes for the different colors, so that if it goes to a different painter, or say Dallas has to do touch-ups or something like that, they can base everything off those recipes, and they're repeatable. So like, not just one person can do it, but any professional painter can come in and with the recipes get very close to mimicking the style with a little bit of creative direction. But that is a huge part of Dallas's job and role as creative director.
And lastly, the inverse of our what happens when you turn passion, creativity into a profession. How do you temper your passion with like business acumen?
Ooh, we don't have enough time for that one.
I know that one's big.
I mean, at the end of the day, right? It's always checking your personal feelings or thoughts on a subject against other like people or other data points, right? So a great example of that is how we collaborate within the studio. We bring in other people to give opinions, and we look at stuff critically, and we take feedback seriously, and we analyze it and try to determine, okay, do we agree with it? If we're confused by it, we'll ask for clarification or whatever. Looking at community chatter and discussion, the best way to do it is to pull in all your data points and to be objective about, okay, at the end of the day, even if I as a person or we as a studio, let's just say all 30-ish people, 36 people or however huge we are now, as a studio agreed that this new project we did is the greatest game ever made. Zero question. Factually, the greatest thing ever devised by humankind. Nothing will ever be better. We've nailed it. It's incredible. If we put that out and only the 30-some people in the studio agree with that, we have abjectly failed, because our goal as a studio is to create games and products that appeal to a much wider audience, that appeal to a great mass of folks, so that we can create big communities and those games can grow and thrive and bring in more people, right? Like we're community builders at the end of the day. Our goal is to create the widest and most appealing thing possible. And so a lot of the times you have to really be serious with yourself about, okay, well, I don't like this particular way of doing things, or I don't like this style of game mechanic, but we can tell, or we know through feedback and analysis and everything else, that this makes for the widest appealing game. It may not be perfect. It may not be the thing that I want personally or we want as a studio, but the ultimate goal always is to make the thing that's going to appeal to the most people and create the strongest game possible. That's not always going to be the strongest game in your opinion. And so it just comes down to a lot of like gut checking, discussion and analysis, and then saying, okay, we believe that what we've done is not only great from our opinions and the best thing that we can do, but also hits all of the checkpoints that mean that it's going to be accessible and exciting to the widest range of people as possible. And then you put it out there and you see if you're right or wrong. And that's the most scary part. But
we did it.
There you go.
We answered so many questions here.
So many questions. We got a beautifully, mostly painted Captain Marvel, at least the binary form. We got to go back and do the same thing on our transformed form, but there you go. All right, well, thank you so much. We're 8 minutes over. Hope that you had a blast. Hope you're inspired, ready to go do some more stuff. Dallas is going to be back tomorrow. He's going to be bringing back a mini extravaganza moment with his Warrior Falls that he started at our big event that was just like a month ago, less than a month ago. I don't know. It feels like forever, but also just yesterday. So if you caught the stream for him working on his amazing Warrior Falls, he's going to be working some more on that, doing the water effects and everything else. So definitely tune in for that. And then, of course, I'll be back next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for more painting, hobbying, question, discussion, whatever action. Till then, I've been Will. You've been great. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining us, and goodbye.